Okay, so I bought yet another vehicle, and I know you're probably not surprised because I tend to do this quite frequently against my better judgment. Please say hi to my 1985 Dodge Mini Ram van. So my neighbor had owned this beige mini cargo van since the early 90s, and it hasn't been driven regularly since 2015. I had occasionally seen it sitting in his garage, and I kept telling myself, one day I'm going to own that van. Fast forward to a few years later, and the van was sitting right there in his driveway, tempting me to ask him about it. He asked for $1,000, and I figured, sure, that's reasonable, let's do it. So we went for a quick test drive, and it only stalled a few times, and here we are, and it's now sitting in my driveway instead of his. Checkmate? Now, I've owned this van for several months, and I would have made a video with it sooner, but it was parked in my front yard for a month, being used as a centerpiece for a Halloween decoration, so had to wait. So honestly, I don't really have a good reason for purchasing this, like most of the vehicles that I buy, but I'm pretty sure he was just going to donate it and it would have likely ended up in a junkyard somewhere. And you know me, I like to try to save stuff like this, cars that are just ordinary basic transportation, cars that generally have been crushed long ago because they were simply A to B appliances. Cars with no reason to exist beyond serving that sole purpose. But now that there are almost none of these left, maybe they are worth saving, if only to remember what ordinary people used to drive back in the 80s and the 90s. And depending on how you look at it, this van is pretty ordinary. The Mini Ram van, introduced in 1984, was basically a stripped-down cargo van version of the ubiquitous Dodge Caravan.
Witness the emergence of a revolutionary automotive idea, Dodge Caravan. One vehicle that takes the place of an economy car, sporty car, station wagon, and van. Dodge Caravan is a transportation revolution.
But the profit margins on a fully loaded Caravan were much higher than a Mini Ram van, so Chrysler focused their attention on those instead. Even back in the day, these tiny cargo vans weren't all that popular. And part of that could be due to relatively cheap gas. Many buyers just opted for the larger and not much more expensive full-size vans from Dodge, Ford Econoline, and the Chevy G20 vans. And even though this vehicle was called the Mini Ram van, it doesn't say Mini Ram van anywhere on the vehicle. It just says Ram right here. So Chrysler renamed the Mini Ram van as the Caravan CV in '89, and they were built until 1995, though the CV did end up coming back in 2003. These were ahead of their time, at least for the US market. This was way before the Ford Transit Connect and the Ram ProMaster City came to the US. All right, so what exactly do we have here? Let's do a quick walk around of the exterior of this van. Starting with the front, it's all rectangles, so many rectangles. Got the quad stacked headlights here, asymmetrical grille, you got the offset Dodge logo here on the right, actual metal bumper, those were starting to go away by the 80s. You got the original old school blue and yellow California plates. I really like this little design detail on the turn signals, this little chrome bit that kind of accents that, and then chrome surrounds everywhere here. It seems as though I'm missing the hood ornament. I'd like to find one of those again. And moving on to the side, there is just so much blank space right here. One of the ideas that I had for this van, I wanted to take it to like a Radwood show and put some graphics on the side that said like Joe's Atari service or something like that. I haven't quite figured out what I want to do there, but it seems like it would be a really good opportunity for some sort of throwback graphics. Let me know if you have any ideas there. Got some really nice pinstriping here. Well, it's not really nice anymore. It's kind of weathered a bit, but it's a nice little design detail. And really from the side, it's just sort of a Caravan without windows. It's got some pretty nice looking alloy wheels, though it does appear as though the center cap is missing. I'll see if I can find those. And yeah, these tires are quite old. I think they have 2000 date codes. So yeah, 25-year-old tires. I should probably swap those out before I drive this any long distance. But lots of nice little boxy, squared off design details on this thing. Now, I'm not sure if this is a 1980s quality control issue or somewhere along the line this got a bit messed up, but I find it kind of funny that this door handle is not aligned properly. It's kind of angled down a little bit. I could very well believe that it was like that from the factory, but probably somewhere over the years this got a bit messed up. Moving on to the back, we got our Dodge logo on one side, Ram van logo on the other side, but yet again, it does not say mini Ram van. You just had to know that's what this is. This has not been driven in quite a while. Check this out. Tennis is my racket. That's fun. Huge, huge glass in the back of this thing. It's really easy to see out of the back of this vehicle, even with this giant metal panel right there, because there is just so much glass out the back. Once again, actual metal bumper. So obviously right here, this is one area where the previous owner just went for a quick fix with the tape on their smashed up taillight. Yeah, a couple bumps and bruises here in the back, but it's kind of what you would expect for a cargo van. They're not exactly meant to be kept pristine. And then right here on this side, you can see that this appears to be an aftermarket window that somebody added. That was a very popular thing to do to cargo vans in the 80s and 90s. And we have a sliding door on one side because that's the way it was back in the 80s. Unless you were driving a Nissan Stanza wagon, which I had, which had sliding doors on both sides, but that wasn't technically a minivan. It needs to be greased. It's a little bit hard to open. So much room for activities. If you were a kid in the 80s and 90s and your family had a van, you'd always have to worry about your fingers getting stuck here when you're shutting that sliding door. Pretty sure that happened to me once or twice. But you know, honestly, I'm impressed with how good this looks considering how old this thing is. And the fact that it's a cargo van. These were not generally treated very well. All right, so before we step inside this glorious beige machine, let's see what's under the hood. It's a really flimsy and floppy hood. Jeesh. All right, so for the first 3 years of production, 2 engines were offered in the Caravan, both straight 4 engines with 2-barrel carburetors. The base 2.2 liter was borrowed from the Chrysler K cars and produced 96 horsepower. And in my mini Ram van, I have the 2.6 liter Mitsubishi engine. You can see it says Mitsubishi right there. Also says MCA jet. I think that's related to the carburetor. And yeah, you put your head in here and it just smells like gas. It's kind of what you get with an old carbureted vehicle. And this 2.6 was not much of an upgrade in terms of horsepower from the 2.2. And this one made a smoking 104 horsepower when new. In mid-87, the engines were replaced with more powerful units, and they were upgraded a couple times after that. So in my van, I have the 3-speed Torque Flight automatic transmission, but a 5-speed manual was available. Kind of interesting that they store the jack right up here in the front, and I think that's because there's just so much space in this engine bay. It's not a gigantic engine for the size of this vehicle, and I just noticed right now the battery in this vehicle is from 2016. I'm actually kind of surprised that this thing starts as well as it does, and that battery isn't just completely trashed. But in general, everything under here looks pretty good. Everything is in decent condition. Just need to deal with that stalling. And that could be due to old gas. Maybe the carburetor needs to be cleaned or tuned. Maybe it's just as simple as like the idle speed adjustment. Not quite sure yet. Also, look at how small this radiator is. It only takes up half of the front of this vehicle. And one other feature that I don't have on any of my other vehicles is a light under the hood right here. And I think that's because Chrysler knew that it was going to stall a lot, so you'd need to be able to see what you're doing when you're fiddling around with the carburetor. So yeah, if I'm gonna be driving this vehicle more frequently, I'm gonna have to deal with this. All right, let's take a look at this interior. So much beige. And I think the magic of this van is that nothing is here. It's just completely empty aside from these 2 seats in the front. And you know what? Before we talk about this, let's talk about that cargo area because that's kind of the most important thing with this vehicle. So let's head back there. All right, so it may not look like it, but it's actually going to be a struggle to open this hatch because the struts on either side no longer work, and this thing weighs like 150 pounds. I mean, it's not that much, but it's really, really heavy. So the previous owner had left a piece of wood in there that's strategically placed so you can just kind of reach it while you're trying to open this thing. So, all right, let's see if I can do this without cracking my skull open, getting a concussion. All right, so what you gotta do is lift this. Oh my God, it's so heavy. And then kind of rest this here for a second, try to grab this out, and then, oh my God, it's so heavy. And then you gotta put this here, and then make sure you don't have any children or pets anywhere near this because this could probably kill you if it fell on you. I'm not joking. This thing is so heavy. If you were here and it hit your head, you'd probably be dead. So I do need to have this fixed. So as you can see, we have a flat floored cargo area and it's carpeted, which is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if this is factory carpet. It kind of looks like it, but if you lift it up, you can see it's bare metal floor under there. And there is a lot of space in here. We got 4 feet from the floor to the ceiling, 4 feet between these rear wheel wells. And this thing can haul up to 1,700 pounds of stuff. And there's really no frills back here. Actually, it's kind of surprising there is a headliner, but on the walls it's just stamped steel. Couple lights, which is useful, but other than that, all you got back here is just empty space, which is what you want. But yeah, you could probably live in this thing. It's that big. All right, let's move up to the front seats. First, I have to carefully get out of here and hope this thing doesn't decapitate me. Slide this back in there. Don't lose any fingers. There we go. All right, so here we are in the front seat of my 1985 Dodge Mini Ram van. And I have to say, one of my first impressions of this vehicle is that these seats are incredibly comfortable. I'm reminded of the seats that I had in my 87 Chrysler Fifth Avenue. Now, these do not have fine Corinthian leather. These are cloth and vinyl, but they are super comfortable. And one staple of vans from the 80s and 90s are these armrests. Unfortunately, it's missing the armrest on the passenger side, but we've got the driver's side still. If you know about Chrysler cars from the 80s, you're very familiar with the steering wheel. This steering wheel was in all sorts of Chrysler vehicles. This may have been the exact same steering wheel that was in my grandma's Dodge Aries, I can't remember. But lots of shared components here. Gauges are very similar to what you'd find in other Chrysler vehicles from the era. But just in general, I'm sort of surprised at how well this has held up. Door panels, yeah, they're a little bit dirty, but they've really stood the test of time. But yeah, really good looking. No cracks on the dashboard. This was also a van staple from the 80s, this fake wood trim that we've got everywhere. Never looked good back then, but somehow it made you feel like you were having a touch of luxury or something. I don't really know why that was so popular, but it was. We got these cup holders here on the dash, and it kind of looks like somebody screwed those in with some sheet metal screws or something, but that's gonna stay there because I think if I took it out, it would just leave a couple holes in the dash. And honestly, it's nice to have cup holders in a vehicle from 85. That wasn't generally a thing. Huge fuel gauge, because you're gonna have to watch that when your 2.6 liter carbureted Mitsubishi is just guzzling down fuel. Got a vent down here at the bottom to cool your private parts. Pretty simple controls for the heat and air conditioning. It's missing the stereo, but I could probably find a period correct Chrysler stereo to go in there. Once again, we have a Ram van badge in here, but it does not say Mini Ram van, it just says Dodge Ram van. It's almost like Chrysler came up with that name at the last minute and decided it didn't need to be anywhere on the vehicle. All right, what does the horn sound like? Oh, not exactly what I expected it to sound like. It sounds a little bit wimpier than I would have predicted. You'll also notice there is no glove box on this Mini Ram van. There's actually this little drawer under the passenger seat that you can put all your stuff in. Owner's manual is, and that actually does say Mini Ram van. Yeah, it shows 26,450 miles, but obviously this is only a 5-digit odometer, so I'm guessing it's 126,450. But yeah, overall in pretty good condition, which is surprising for an 85 cargo van. Really happy about that. A couple little issues here and there, but nothing major. Obviously, the previous owner really liked this thing and took good care of it. All right, so let's finally drive this thing. Now, this may not go very well because, as I mentioned, that carburetor needs some tuning. It stalls all the time, but I think we could at least drive it around the neighborhood a little bit, as long as we don't go too fast because, like I said, these tires are very old. All right, let's start this thing up. But yeah, if you keep your foot on the gas a little bit, it runs really nice. If you let your foot off the gas, yep, just stalls. All right, so we have an old school column mounted shifter here. One issue though is that the indicator no longer works. Okay, that's reverse, that's neutral, that's drive, and it's stalled. I didn't have my foot on the gas enough, but anyway, you get the idea. Let's try again. All right, here we go. Maybe not. So I drove a Caravan ages ago, so it's been a long time since I've driven one of these things, but it just sort of feels like a minivan from the 80s without anything behind me. And it hasn't stalled yet, knock on fake wood. So yeah, the entire time I'm in this vehicle with it running, I'm like, okay, when is it gonna stall? When is it gonna stall? Is it going to be at a very inopportune time when there's like a lot of traffic or something? But I'm just kind of like putzing around my neighborhood, so hopefully I don't run into too many other cars. It's mainly when I get to stop signs I have to be concerned. All right, so I'm gonna keep my foot on the accelerator a little bit while I'm braking. Okay, here we go. It didn't stall, nice. So, you know, if I floor it, actually, it's not as slow as I thought it was gonna be. This old Mitsubishi motor is still making some horsepower, maybe not 104, like it did when it was new. But you know what? It drives really nice. I think that was kind of the nice thing about one of these versus like the large full-size vans. This drove more like a car, a lot easier to park, a lot easier to maneuver, and still had a ton of space. So once again, I really don't have any idea why I bought this vehicle. I don't need a van, let alone a carbureted van that stalls from 1985, but I just couldn't let this get junked. I couldn't let this get donated and end up in a billion pieces at a junkyard. But it is kind of funny just driving this thing around and me loving it so much. And I think most other people are just thinking, what's that old van still doing on the road? You know, unless you're a fan of forgotten basic transportation, or you really like the cars from the 80s and 90s, or you're a fan of Radwood, a mini Ram van absolutely wouldn't be considered collectible. What's actually at play here is that I might have a few mental issues that cause me to continue to buy forgotten cars from the 80s and 90s. I don't know if there's like medication for that. If there is, let me know. But honestly, it's just really fun to drive something like this around. It's like stepping into a time machine. And I'm just glad I sort of figured out the trick to driving this thing. Just keep my foot on the accelerator pedal at all times, just a little bit, and it won't stall. All right, I will try to find a more elegant fix for that, but at least I can drive this thing around. Now, getting it to pass smog, that's another story. I'll give it my best shot. And that might be the reason why this sat in the garage for 10 years. It's very possible it didn't pass emissions. You know, if I could just find one of the last couple remaining carburetor mechanics here in Los Angeles, maybe I can get this thing tuned up and fixed. So yeah, finding a Dodge Caravan or a Plymouth Voyager from this area is tough, even though they sold millions, and these mini Ram vans only accounted for a tiny fraction of Dodge's vans from the era. So I'm surprised that there's any of these left at all. And while these small cargo vans didn't really have any durability upgrades from the Caravans, they got put to work hauling cargo, tools, plywood, and more all over North America. And A to B appliances like this one are usually kicked to the curb when they get old and require more maintenance. But for some reason, my neighbor decided not to junk it and just stick it in his garage for 10 years. So finding and buying a mini Ram van now is almost like opening a buried time capsule. I honestly haven't seen a Dodge minivan from this generation on the road in years. This might be one of the last mini Ram vans left. So there you have it, the latest addition to my fleet, my 1985 Dodge Mini Ram van. I had absolutely no reason to buy this vehicle from my neighbor, but I did it anyway because I'm not that smart. Was it a good addition or a terrible mistake? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. If you'd like to help support the show, please buy a Hello Road t-shirt or hat at helloroad.tv/shop. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.